June 10th regular town board meeting of the town of Rhinebeck. Would everybody please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So seeing all the crowd, I think I'm going to switch up the agenda a little bit, but first I'd like a motion for approval of our May 13th regular town board minutes and our May 23rd special town board minutes. Thank you. May I have a second? Thank you, Chauncey. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. We'll wait for announcements. Is Jeffrey Dombrowski here? I'm sorry.
It's okay, I'm with him on the presentation as well.
We're going to ask you just to wait a little bit. We're going to take some other business first.
That works out perfectly because he's got all the technicals.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask for our engineer to wait to give us, John, where are you? I met you out in the hallway. Thanks. We're going to take you after we take, I think, let's go with request from the Gardens at Rhinebeck Path Committee to endorse a letter to the New York State Department of Transportation seeking construction of a pedestrian and bicycle access from the Gardens to the village in the Thompson-Mazzarella Park, tab 16. Did I get that right? I think that's why everybody's here. So I think we have, who's representing the garden? Is it Yvonne and Al? Come on up. Hi, thanks for coming. So, Yvonne had asked me for also a meeting, but I thought it would be better if we discussed what you want to discuss in public with the whole board. I'm one of 5, and we need to start talking about these things publicly. The town's involvement in moving this ahead and how it's going to be funded. So thanks for coming. You want to take us through this request, Yvonne?
Okay, so in the gardens, we have more and more residents as the gardens is being finished. And so we have a lot of pedestrian, bicycle, foot traffic, baby carriages, people walking on Astor Drive to get into the village to hook up with the path that's already there for the woods, as well as on Rhinebeck Road going to the library, the Mazzarella Park, and into the sidewalk that connects there into the village. I personally walk it frequently. It's not safe. This isn't really a request for, oh, wouldn't this be nice to have this? This is already being used by, I don't know, tens of people a day. I mean, I couldn't get a count, but on the weekend, it's nonstop people moving in both directions, bicycles, runners, joggers, walkers of all ages on both sides of the road, and there is nothing. There's no sidewalk, no path. There is already a path worn into Rhinebeck Road in the grass, which is tall, and people are concerned about ticks. Nobody wants to walk in the tall grass on the side of the road, and the shoulders are so narrow, and Astor Drive is very curvy, so there's blind spots. And with the amount of use that it gets from the residents in the woods, the gardens, and the people that live along Rhinebeck Road, we think it's high time that there is safer walking and bicycle access into the village. We've started working with Winnicke because the Gardens owns a big section of the land in that area in between the 2 roads. We'd like to start developing trails and walkways that get us into the village, into the park, into the library, as well as just general recreational trails on the garden-owned property. We've already started making paths on the garden's property itself that we're in the process of starting to maintain that would connect up with these paths. So we're a very committed partner in wanting to see this happen, but we can't really do it ourselves. We really need the help of the town, the support of the town to make this possible. A lot of the benefits it would include would not only be less vehicle traffic into the village, it would bring more business, I think, into the village. People on foot are more likely to stop and visit shops and things. We've reached out to a lot of the businesses in town, and we see very favorable support from them as well as just the environmental impact, as well as hooking up to some of these larger trails that are in the works, like the Empire Trail, that are a longer-term project. We really think it would make a better Rhinebeck village and town to have a lot more pedestrian and safer pedestrian access and more recreational possibilities. So we're actively pushing for something to start happening here in terms of looking to the town to help us.
What do you need by help from the town?
Well, logistical and financial help. How do we get this project off the ground? So one of the ideas we have was on Astor Drive. The simplest thing to do on Astor Drive is to continue the woods path, which is a 4-foot wide paved path all the way to the gardens. That we feel is the simplest one that could be done.
A sidewalk.
I guess it's not a concrete sidewalk, it's a path.
Yeah.
And, there's plenty of space on that side of the road. There is village and town access that we would need to work with. Gardens owns a large section of that, Woods owns another section of that, and then I think a little
The
piece of
village.
hospital.
Oh, the hospital and the village.
And the village and the water treatment plant there. But we feel that's probably the easiest one that can be done. It can be easily paved and it's not a big construction project. On the Rhinebeck Road, 308, that's more complicated because it's owned by the state. So we had talked previously of getting a letter drafted from the gardens to the state, asking them to, what's their involvement, how could they help us out? And you recommended that maybe the town would also send a letter with us on that. So that's sort of why we're here, is that we have tremendous support for this in the gardens, and we really want to move forward.
So you've been here before. We told you that we're supportive of this. I guess what we were looking, and you're working with Winnicke, was an actual plan, because what I'm hearing is we want 2 connectors. One from the north side of the gardens on Astor, meeting up with the existing path, and another coming out of the south side on Rhinecliff Road at a place to be determined, and a sidewalk along Rhinecliff Road, maybe meeting up with the library sidewalk.
Yes. Those are the 2 obvious possibilities, and then eventually connecting the 2 through the property that is mostly gardens behind the town, which I think borders up with the hospital property.
I thought that the path would come out of the garden's southern entrance. You have 2 there, one that's not in use and one is. I thought it would come out there and along Rhinecliff Road. Is that not it?
Well, the shortest way to do it is to have it come out at the town maintenance garage.
I don't know how feasible that is. We would have to get our superintendent involved, because I guess we're looking for a concrete plan from you and Winnicke, and then we would write grants and start funding some money that, during a budget season to come up with. Sally, you have any idea on how best to organize this? Not to put you on the spot, that you're an expert.
Well, the town board and people at the gardens know that Winnicke has a keen interest on this. We've been involved with trails for a long time. We think it's doable. We have a couple of properties that we need access into, and one of the main properties is the hospital. That property is key to get a safe and comfortable access.
But are
for
we
people.
allowed to put sidewalks in within the right-of-way on a road?
Well, you're talking about state DOT. The
Why
state,
state DOT?
because Rhinecliff Road.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Astor Road.
No, I wasn't talking about Astor. Our interest has been really driven in the direction of going to Rhinecliff Road, to connect to the trails at the park and to connect to the village. It's the fastest, and I guess we see that as the best way of creating an
So we're not
access point.
looking at two trails, we're looking at one.
The gardens are probably looking at the two.
Okay.
Whiskey is really going in one direction. We do have a grant proposal that needs the support of both the town and especially the hospital, because we would really need their property to have access. We have in the past had conversations with the hospital, and we're attempting to meet with them again to further discuss this. You know, submitting the grant really doesn't commit the town or Winnicke or Gardens to anything. You submit the grant, they may or may not approve it. Even after it's approved, you have time before you go into a contract. What we're looking for is the ability to submit this proposal, and even if it's not approved this year, the people reviewing them, you know, next year, you just move closer to the top. So that really is our goal, and the date is like, I think, the 26th or 27th of July, where that proposal has to be submitted. Winnicke, as you know, has come up with some rough estimates, and I know how challenging it is for the town to come up with the dollars that may be required. I think because trails are so important to all funding sources, that there is the ability.
There is money out there.
To go out and find money through grants. And again, let's get the application in, work towards approval, and then we can deal with the details, because there's really no commitment on anyone's part.
Warren, what do you think? Can we proceed with this? Or?
This is the first I've heard about the application. Is this the application through the cemetery, or is this a different application?
Well, it is part of this. The cemetery is part of it. Long term, there are a lot of connections.
But what we're talking about right now is just Rhinecliff Road.
Yes, but it doesn't mean that the proposal goes beyond that, but it doesn't mean that in detail that's what you're going to work towards. I think the state, you know, the state looks at creativity in the trails. They look for more than one connection. The goal of reaching out and connecting to the Empire State Trails gets you the extra points that you need. So in order to get a positive response, you really have to try and connect all these things.
Well, I think we have more work to do on the cemetery, but we definitely want to work, I think, speaking for the board, correct me if I'm wrong, we are ready to do the Astor Road connector and the Rhinecliff Road connector. The cemetery has big unanswered questions for us, which you know about with deeds and maintenance,
Right.
and that we haven't been satisfied on that yet. So you have to tell us how we can proceed. I mean, the town is willing to support you, but we need citizens to take this up, form a committee, write grants for the Astor Road. We would fund it as best we could within budget. We're not giving money outside of a budget cycle. That comes, you know, we can create a capital plan. We could fund it if the board decides to do that, or we could mandate that it all be done through grants. That's a board decision. But as far as support, we think we're very supportive.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. Our goal, and maybe the town could play a role in working with the hospital to, again, get them to sign off. Let's see how far we could go with this. But together, as a community, look at the people that are here tonight. It's absolutely wonderful.
Sally, I'd be happy to meet with you in the hospital to talk
Wonderful.
about this.
Thank you,
And if another
Elizabeth.
board member wanted to join me, we could absolutely, Kira, Alan, you know, let's do that. If
Okay,
you set
great.
it up, we will make ourselves available.
Okay.
I assume that the board is going to approve that we sign this letter and send it to the state.
I think it's fine in substance. There are a couple of tweaks that I'd like to discuss before you sign it, but nothing of substance. Nothing that will give you a problem. Okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
This is
Warren, do you have any advice for us?
this is the first I've heard
I
of it.
just handed it to him.
So I'd like to take a look at it. Are we talking about endorsing a grant application that's due July 26th?
Yes.
Have we seen that document?
No.
I think what we're endorsing is the desire to build trails that make it safer.
No,
for
Sally
people.
indicated that the application has to be on 26th.
Right.
Well, the town would be making the
We have to see
application,
that.
right?
That application.
Would the town be lead on the app? Would it be our application?
Winnicke is submitting that application. It could be done jointly, whatever the desire is of the town. We just want to see submittal.
So we need it by our next meeting to approve.
Which is when?
Getting tight.
At the end of June. What is it? No, July 10th, July 8th?
Okay, great.
So there's time.
And we'll try it,
Hold on one
we'll work
second.
towards getting it before that date.
July 8th, we could approve it, but we would need to work with Warren on this full speed ahead by then.
Okay.
Sal, wasn't there any requirement of the developer of the gardens to construct any trails? Wasn't that part of their approval?
The developer, what was given to Winnicke as an easement was close to 30 acres of land. And there was a rough cutout of a trail. Initially, there was a huge trail delineated around most of the property. At that time, I think the environment at the gardens, the homeowners, were not supportive of trails.
It was
As you can see.
It was the bottom, it
has
was the
changed.
bottom of the economic recession.
Right.
I mean, we were just trying to
I
fix
think the
phase
town had to
2.
sign off on that for, there was a quid pro quo to that.
Yeah, it never happened the way it was initially proposed by the planning board, and the planning board did participate in some modification of the trail network.
The gardens is also now significantly bigger.
Yeah,
right? It's
we're all supportive of this.
Right.
It's figuring out the logistics.
And trails are a lot more important today than they were 5 years ago.
There's a huge funding source in the state for it, especially in light of the, so Yvonne, I think you have your answer. You're going to work with Chauncey on, he wants to make a couple of revisions to this letter, and then we will sign it. Do we need a resolution to allow me to sign it? I'll make a motion from the floor to allow the supervisor to sign the letter in support of the trails on Rhine Cliff Road in the gardens after it has been revised to Chauncey and Warren's satisfaction with Yvonne. May I have a second? Is there any further discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. So Yvonne,
That's wonderful.
you'll work with Chauncey on that directly, and Chauncey will get it approved by Warren. You and I and another board member to be determined will meet with
Great.
the hospital, we'll meet with
Denise,
thank
George,
you.
and
whomever, as
feels
soon
from
as
her board.
possible.
Great.
And we will support Winnicke's, we will work from now until July 8th with Warren to get that
Okay.
approval of the grant for this. I don't yet know what we're going to do with the Astor Drive segment, but I think that we do need a committee that's going to be dedicated to seeking grants to put that in and costing it and everything like that to work with us. Yes?
Would it help if, and there's a lot of people here from the gardens who are really supporting this kind of issue, would it help if there was a petition signed with a bunch of names?
We don't need a petition, we're in favor of it.
Fine, okay.
We don't need a big petition, we're saying yes.
That you might need.
No, No,
I think it's a great idea.
we're the town board here, and I think we're all in agreement, so we'd be petitioning vigorously for our support that we agree to give.
Yeah, we need that energy for other things in the
Yeah,
future regarding
save your
trails.
petition, yeah, I think we're all on board. Adam?
Yeah, this includes the after side, and I mean, the after side is relatively easy. It's a 4-foot wide.
That's what I'd like to see, you guys form a committee to cost it out and to start working on the town's behalf to secure funding for it. And that's the way I think to do it. I think Winnicke's taking the lead on Rhinecliff Road. I think the Gardens Trail Committee, or the Rhinebeck Gardens Trail Committee has to take the lead on Astor. And, you know, someone from the board will work with you on it. Does anybody want to take lead on this? Kira will be your liaison for the Astor Road. I think the board is in total agreement in this, and it
And
just
so
takes...
you're talking about working with the board within your budget to do the.
No, I'm not saying, we've not decided to fund this. We've not said we're funding this.
About the money.
We have said that there's grant money out there, and you guys are gonna have to write grants, and we'll put them in for the town.
But first, it's figure out how much is it going to cost, where is the proposed trail going to go? Is it
Do we
being
have-
everything? Will there be plantings? How much money do we even really need?
Do we
That's the
need
next
the
step.
permission of all the landowners? How are we going to get that? And then we go after grant money. Potentially, we could use, but I don't, you know, it's a capital plan. We always go for grants. That's how we close our budget loopholes, and it's doable. You know?
Sally, let me, are you talking about continuing the path that goes to the woods now? And-
Sally is
and-
not, Winnicke is not,
Just one answer.
let me just say, Winnicke has said that they are concentrating on
I just asked you.
Rhinecliff Road.
Sally probably knows. Would we be talking about extending it on Rhinecliff Road over the property owned by the hospital? Or who
Yes.
owns that property?
Yes,
It's all the hospital.
Yeah.
until we cross the street, until we cross the street to go to the library.
Isn't that where Wells Manor, isn't that the Wells Manor?
No, it
It's
would,
not.
no, it's
That's
different
adjacent.
than Wells Manor, it's other property there. The hospital owns some 20-odd acres.
So we just need an easement.
Yes, yes.
I think it might be helpful for me to bring this back to the letter that Elizabeth has been asked to co-sign with you, Yvonne. The letter contains a few paragraphs setting up the facts and discussing the desirability of doing something about a dangerous situation. All this letter asks us to do, or asks Elizabeth and Yvonne to do, to sign, all this letter asks that, all I will be asking for when they sign this letter is asking this department of, the Highway Department of the State of New York to evaluate the feasibility of constructing this bicycle lane, pathway, and so forth along 308. That's as far as it goes. We haven't asked to do anything other than to ask the state to get in gear and study this.
But I think there's another prong to this.
Well, I
which
understand
is-
that,
Yeah,
but I'm talking about the letter.
yes.
And that's working along 308. That's not the trail connection that
Right.
Winnicke's talking
Yeah,
about.
it's only
And I
308.
know that's very challenging for state DOT. The topography is challenging, the width is, yeah, it's going to be difficult. But none of this is easy. I'd like to take one moment because I think it's important.
Can I interrupt for just a second? I'm sorry to bother everybody, but there's a Nissan out front with the lights on and the engine running
What
and the
color?
doors locked.
Ooh, that sounds,
There's a brown Nissan. If anybody here has a brown Nissan that they accidentally left on, it's running about 6 cars up this way.
thanks, Don, maybe it belongs to one of the houses.
I'd like to take just one moment just to introduce Bob Davis because he may be working with a lot of the people here. Bob, if you could stand up. Bob is the new executive director of Winnicke Land Trust, and he's like 2 weeks old here. So Bob will be playing an important role in trying to achieve the things that are important to you. Okay.
Okay, so there's a two-prong, there's the Rhinecliff Road, which Winnicke will be spearheading, there's Astor Road, which I'm hoping the Gardens, we'll have a trail committee that'll do that, and I think we're clear on what we have to do. And Kira will be working with you on the Astor Road, and I will be working with Sally on Rhinecliff Road and Hospital.
Okay, great.
Let's do
And
it.
should I talk to Warren and Chauncey prior to that July meeting?
I think we should talk, I think
Okay.
you and I will talk too. We have to get everything, Warren has to be satisfied so that we can approve your grant application on the 8th of July.
Great. Okay,
All right?
we'll do that.
Anything else? Anybody want to speak on this? Or thank you for coming. Thanks for advocating for this.
And I'd like to thank everybody that, you had
Thank
great
you.
goals.
I don't know if anybody is here for a discussion item that is a possible amendment to the town solar law regarding screening, obscuring on commercial installations. We are tabling that. The town board is going to be working with our attorney on a draft, and that will be made public once we have a draft law. We are moving on to item F, completion of seeker review process and discussion on vote on a local law amending Town Code Chapter 125 zoning in the matter of establishing a workforce housing district as a floating zone, providing a procedure for locating a workforce housing district, and setting forth regulations for developing therein. Item G4 continued from resolution. We have a resolution here as well. It's tab 4, guys. May I have a motion? Thanks, Alan. May I have a second? Second. Thanks, Ed. Tab 4, Warren, you want to take it away?
Sure. We basically closed the public hearing on this, I think, at the last meeting. The only remaining housekeeping items is to finish the environmental review by going through part 2 of seeker, and then taking a vote on the adoption of the local law and making determination of significance of the seeker. So I have prepared a while back the rationale for determination of the significance of this project, and also prepared a part 2 of the seeker, which goes through all of the questions that you have to answer. I think it might be helpful for me to just read the rationale before we go through part 2. It's not the way we usually do it. It'll help in making your determinations on secret. So the rationale that I prepared, this is what with your input in prior discussions, is that the proposed local law creates a workforce housing district as a floating zone in only 2 of the village gateway zones, which lie north and west adjacent to the village. These districts are more fully described in section 125-15H of the town code. These 2 village and gateway districts were designed to allow for development of residential neighborhoods within walking distance of the village where central water and sewer services are potentially available, and are designed to promote a diversity of housing types in the community and on road architectural design that is compatible with the overall historic character of the village and town of Rhinebeck. The districts adjoin the northern gateway to the village on Route 9 and the western gateway to the village on Rhinecliff Road and Ashton Drive, in areas where it is appropriate for compact village-type development at a density of 1 dwelling for 6,000 square feet of land area. This local law is patented in large part on the active senior housing floating zone, which is described in more detail in section 125-15FF and 125-68KK of the town zoning code. This local law creates a workforce housing district floating zone only within these 2 districts. The law does not by itself establish or approve a project-specific workforce housing project. In order for a workforce housing project to be sited within the zone pursuant to this local law, the project developer would have to make application to the town board for a project-specific rezoning to allow for a workforce housing project in accordance with the criteria set forth in the law and elsewhere in the town code. The act of rezoning by the town board will be a legislative act requiring rigorous public review and a collaborative planning process involving the town board and planning board. Before such a legislative act allowing for such project can be passed by the town board, the proposed project will be subject to project-specific environmental analysis and development of a concept and sketch plan, which will be reviewed and vetted not only by the town board and its planning and legal consultants, but by the planning board, the workforce housing committee, as well as the waterfront advisory committee and their consultants. This local law is designed to assist the town in meeting its workforce housing responsibilities as set forth in the town's comprehensive plan and zoning code and by applicable decisional law in the state of New York. It is possible that maybe a year before a proposed workforce housing project comes before the town board for approval and mapping in accordance with the provisions of this zoning law. However, the town board feels that it's necessary and prudent to have this law in place in the event an opportunity presents itself for a sensible workforce housing development project within these two zones, which will have a necessary proximity to central water and sewer services and the village to accommodate such a project. In the meantime, the existing underlying provisions of the zoning code applicable to these districts will continue to be applied to any other project or development within these proposed zones. The advantage of creating a floating zone for the development of workforce housing is that the town board will have absolute legislative discretion to entertain any workforce housing development project that comes before it, as well as the absolute discretion to deny approval of the project at any stage or at the termination of the approval process. The law allows for greater building density for a project in which a minimum of 80% of the housing units would be earmarked for local workers, i.e. people making no more than 80% of the Dutchess County area median income if it is a rental project, or 100% of the Dutchess County area median income if it is for a for-sale project. Under the proposed law, the size of the workforce housing project would not be greater than 80 housing units, which under the proposed allowable density, which would require at least 8 acres of land, promoting the kind of low-rise style development that is architecturally and stylistically compatible with the existing surrounding area. Before the comprehensive plan and the amendment to the town zoning law enacted in 2009, the development of a workforce housing project in these two zones, as well as other areas within the town, the enactment of the comprehensive plan and zoning law amendments were subject to extensive environmental review, which considered in part possible environmental impacts of such development within the town and these two districts. The town board amended its zoning law code to amended zoning code affordable housing provisions in 2017, and that action is also subject to environmental review. Recommendations for this zoning law amendment was the outgrowth of the work of the Workforce Housing Committee appointed by the town board, which worked with the town planner and the attorney to the town for nearly 2 years in developing this proposed local law. During that process, the committee considered the possible environmental impacts of the increase in density of a workforce housing project in either of these two zones and concluded that the siting of such a facility in either of these two zones had the least potential for adverse environmental impacts on the town of Rhinebeck as well as the village of Rhinebeck. These zones were selected because of their proximity to the village, strong highway access availability, and possibility of connection to the village water and sewer system. The town board has determined that by limiting the size of such a facility to 80 units, the siting of such a facility in either of these two districts will have a minimum impact on the environment with resulting substantial benefit to the Rhinebeck town and village communities. As a result of the foregoing, and I hope you'll adopt this, the town board has determined that the enactment of this amendment to the zoning law does not have the potential for significant environmental impacts, and that an environmental impact statement need not be prepared. Usually we would do that. That would be an addendum to the part 2. So I'm going to just go quickly with you the part 2 analysis, which is just answering questions, which I've taken the liberty as your consultant to answer. Disagree with me, let me know. The first impact is impact on land. The question is, will the proposed action involve construction on or physical alteration of the land surface of the proposed site? Again, the answer is no. The local law will not have that impact. Impact on geological features. The proposed action may result in modification or destruction of or inhibit access to any unique or unusual landforms on the site, i.e., cliffs, dunes, minerals, fossils, and caves. The same answer, no. Impacts on surface water. proposed action may affect one or more wetlands or other surface water bodies, for example, streams, rivers, ponds, or lake. Again, no. 4, impact on groundwater. Proposed action may result in new or additional use of groundwater or may have the potential to introduce contaminants to groundwater or aquifer. Again, this local law will not have that potential. Number 5, impact on flooding. Proposed action may result in development of land subject to flooding. Again, the answer is no. Impacts on air. Number 6, proposed action may include state-regulated air emission source. No. Next, impacts on, and if you disagree, just let me know. The impacts on plants or animals. The proposed action may result in the loss of flora or fauna. No, not the proposed local law, but obviously the construction starts, that would be considered. Number 8, impact on agricultural resources. No. Proposed action may impact agricultural resources. I've answered that no. 9, impact on aesthetic resources. Land use and proposed action are obviously different from or in stark contrast to current land use patterns between the proposed project and the scenic or aesthetic resource. No. 10, impact on historic and archaeological features. Proposed action may occur in or adjacent to historic or archaeological resource. The answer is no. Actually, it would, but it's a small impact. Number 11, impact on open space and recreation. The proposed action may result in a loss of recreational opportunities or reduction in open space resource as designated in any adopted municipal open space plan. The answer to that is no. 12, impact on critical environmental area. The proposed action may be located within or adjacent to a critical environmental area. No, that's not the case. Next would be 13, impact on transportation. The proposed action may result in a change to existing transportation systems. The answer is no. 14, impact on energy. Proposed action may cause an increase in the use of any form of energy. Again, the local law will not have that effect. No. 15, impact on noise, odor, and light. Proposed action may result in an increase in noise, odors, or outdoor lighting. The answer is no. 16, impact on human health. Proposed action may have an impact on human health from exposure to new or existing sources of contaminants. The answer to that is no. 17, consistency with the community plan. The proposed action is not consistent with adopted use plan. The answer to that is no, it is consistent with our comprehensive plan. Consistency with community character is the last criteria. And the proposed action is inconsistent with the existing community character. No, the local law is designed to be cited in facilities of this sort to be cited in places that are consistent with the community character. So I've answered all those questions no, with the rationale which would be attached to the determination of significance. Anybody have any questions or comments? So I prepared a resolution. Basically, I don't have to go through losing my voice, I don't have to go through the resolution. But the resolution would be to adopt the Part 2 and Part 3 of the environmental assessment form and make what we call a negative secret determination that this project, which is the adoption of this local law, will not have the potential for significant environmental impacts such that an environmental impact statement need be prepared. I've gone through the history of the public hearings on the local law, which have now been closed, and the resolution is that the town board adopts this local law as local law number. I'm not sure which one.
To be numbered.
Number.
To be numbered.
You're not. Whatever the number will be, the clerk will put that in. And then we file a copy of the local law as Department of State is required by law. And the town clerk is directed to file a copy of the negative declaration in the environmental notice bulletin as required by the secret regulation.
Does anybody on the board have any questions or comments? So I'll vote by roll call because it is a local law. Kara Bonanza. Aye. Ed Roberts.
Aye.
Alan Shear.
Aye.
Chauncey Walker.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Motion carried. Thank you all very much. And Thank you, Workforce Housing Committee. Thank you. Okay, that was good. We only took a couple of years, but we did it. Thanks, everybody. We have Jeffrey Demansky here on community choice aggregation for local electricity pool buying. He's going to give us, I'm going to ask you to set up. Do you have a slideshow or no slideshow? Or
The slide will go down, but take a picture of the words.
Great, great, thank you. Yeah, hold on. Alan, not Alan, who are you? You're Warren. Warren, I think we're,
Excuse me one second.
yeah, hold on, I'm sorry, one second.
Just get it back.
Thank you, Affordable Housing Committee.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think we're good with you, unless you.
Oh, I thought there was something else you wanted to say.
Was there?
I'm fine with it.
I think we're okay,
Okay.
right?
I'm good.
Am I forgetting? No. Okay, thank you, Warren. Good night.
Good night. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Jeffrey, I'm sorry, I forgot. Glenn, thanks for coming.
Our pleasure, thanks for having us. So I'm Jeff Demansky. I live down in Beacon. I love being up in this neck of the woods. I actually had the pleasure of teaching 4 semesters at Bard College in energy policy. So that's a claim that I apparently know something about energy policy, and I'm going to cling to it very strongly. I'm the director of a not-for-profit called Hudson Valley Energy, and I'm in partnership with Glenn Weinberg from Jewel Community. And we are here to talk briefly, relatively briefly, and we could go on, and very impressively in the discussion of the environmental assessment form. There's very few acronyms, and so I figured I'd just dump a bunch of acronyms on our conversation tonight. So, but we're here to talk generally about a program that was enabled in New York State in 2016, and it goes by the generic name, one of the many generic names, called Community Choice Aggregation. And it has, it was, as I just said, enabled in the state in April of 2016. And there's been a program in Westchester that began soon after it was enabled, the pilot program that started in May 2016. But it goes back to, just to set a little context, it begins with deregulation in New York State and many states in the electricity and gas markets that took place in the late 1990s. And what that did, it created a marketplace. It prevented the utilities from making money basically off providing the supply, from producing energy and supplying energy. The utility companies like Central Hudson now make their money off of the delivery, service, and the billing, the majority portion of what they do, and that continues to be the case. And it created a marketplace for alternative supply sources, and I'm sure many people in this room know that there are many, many companies that will provide an alternative supply source. Fill in the names. There are many, many good companies that do that, and there's about 30, last time I looked, South Central Hudson, there's about 33, I think, when I specifically looked, that provide green and clean energy sources as an option. And typically, if I don't have a full perspective on it, but typically when people choose a green energy source because they want to support renewable energy development in the state, it often comes with a price premium. And that's one case. And for the many people who choose an alternative supplier, I said again, many people have had very good experiences, but there's been a number of cases, and the many, many conversations I've had in the last several weeks I think almost everyone knows that there's been a bad experience that people have had being in an alternative supply contract, with fluctuating rates and exit fees and confusing contracts and challenges ending those contracts. So all of this information about deregulation, about these alternative supply contracts, many of which are good, but some have caused challenge, and a price premium on clean energy through this alternative supply sets the context, sets the stage for why the state enabled community choice aggregation. And it was the 7th state in the United States to do so when it did so in 2016. Community choice aggregation, in essence, gives municipalities, local governments, cities, towns, villages, the ability to form a buying club, if you will, but to change the default decision-making process that consumers have available to them. In the context before community choice aggregation, the state indicated that if you do not make a choice, if you do not get into one of those alternative supply contracts, then in essence, the utility company, your local utility company, makes that supply decision for you. And they do so on a month-to-month basis, and the rates vary. Under community choice aggregation, as I said, a municipality or a group of municipalities has the ability to change that default setting, to go out to market, to identify a cost advantageous price for energy. And with the goals of what the reason it's been enabled in the state, in New York, is to also promote clean energy. So to boil it back down, my summary points, the reason that the state enabled this and municipalities are doing this, and we'll give you a bit of a highlight of who's doing what and what we're involved in, but for 3 reasons. 1, significantly consumer protection, because a number of folks were having bad experiences in those individual contracts. Under CCA, it's an agreement at the municipal level with a supplier and with an administrator, and Jewel is the administrator that I'm working with, and they're one of 3 outside of Westchester that are currently approved in New York State. So 1, consumer protection. 2, the possibility, the opportunity for cost savings to get a price that's lower than the utility is charging on a month-to-month basis or on average over the year. And 3, to promote clean energy. And in essence, those are the goals that we're working very hard to promote. Westchester has been in operation, as I mentioned, since May of 2016, and has demonstrated the powerful aspect or the powerful ability of this model. They entered a 2-year contract with about 20 communities in May of 2016.
I'm sorry, the county or 27
20 communities within the county.
municipalities?
Yep, thank you for the clarification. Yeah, about 20 communities, 19 or 20 communities within the county joined together and selected, actually spun off from an organization there, Sustainable Westchester, as administrator. But went out to market, got a fixed price for 2 utility zones. But in essence, it went well enough in the 2-year contract that they had that they did another contract. They went back out to market and did it again. And the summary of the experience up through at least October of 2018, so in about 2.5 years of operation, they collectively saved $17 million on behalf of their residents and citizens. So just to repeat again, this is something that municipalities do not for themselves, not for their own buildings, not for their own energy bills, but it's something they do on behalf of their small businesses and their citizens within their borders. Yes?
What I hear is that we would form a buying group, whether it's the town of Rhinebeck or the town and village of Rhinebeck or the town of Rhinebeck and Red Hook. We would have an administrator and we would make our green choices. This would be the default for all of our residents. It would be based on green, clean, renewable energy, but also there would be a cost savings. We would be ensuring that our residents get the lowest price. How do we do that every month? Like, I don't have the ability to look at things every month.
Do you want to speak to my joint?
Sure. It's not a monthly sort of maintenance contract. What you do is you put it out to bid, just like the town or the village would do for various other things that you go through procurement protocol for. We do a similar thing. We aggregate communities. The program that Jeff is running now here in the Hudson Valley is a group of 7 communities within Central Hudson Territory that have secured a contract and are actually launching on July 1st.
What are the 7 communities?
Well, it's the city of Poughkeepsie, the town of Fishkill, the city of Beacon, the town of Phillipstown, the village of Cold Spring, the town of Marbletown, and the town of Red Hook, who is signed on, and they'll actually be staggered. They'll start probably a month or 2 late into the contract.
So we only have 4 Dutchess County municipalities, and the other 3 are
1 in Ulster and 2 in Putnam,
Yeah.
right? And so what we did is we brought those communities together, and we went out to bid on behalf of all of those communities as a group. They still have individual sovereignty, so to speak, within that group, but we brought them out to the market as a group to capitalize on the size of the aggregation. So the size matters. The consumer protective layer that Jeff spoke about is critically important, but the size of the aggregation matters in terms of the pricing that you'll get back from the market. So we drove competition through several suppliers, and we awarded that contract for a 2-year period. Now, that's a contract that the town signs for a 2-year period, but each individual resident and small business within the town has the option to opt out of the program before it even starts, to join the program, and then to leave the program at any time with no penalty
Well,
whatsoever.
wait, but we are opting them in, so they would have to opt out.
They have to opt out to get out, that's right. So it becomes the default, and so because of that, it's automatic enrollment for anybody that is currently with Central Hudson for supply. If you already have an alternate supplier, as Jeff mentioned, you won't be affected by this program.
So our administrator creates an aggregate, shops for what we're going to purchase. How often is what we're purchasing changing?
2 years, about every 2 years. So this is a 2-year contract that's a fixed rate
For 2 years.
for 2 years. So that means every month it'll be the same. And the way that these things tend to work, Jeff mentioned $17 million in aggregate savings in Westchester. And by the way, that program grew from 20 communities that launched to now 27. So it's a growing program, and actually 26 of the 27 have set a 100% New York State clean energy supply as the default offering, which is really cool. The reason that they're able to save so much money in addition to accessing clean energy is because of that fixed rate. So on most months of the year, 7-8 months of the year, the price Central Hudson offers and the fixed rate are going to be comparable, roughly the same, right? What happens is when energy demand spikes, so does price. So typically July, August, January, February, sometimes December, you'll see usually 2, 3, 4 times a year that the price of energy will go up, way up, maybe as much as, the average is about 6.5, 7 cents, might go up to as much as 10 or 11 cents in a given month. So that's how these programs tend to save a lot of money. Because the fixed rate stays constant, of course, in those months when there's stress on the power grid from electricity demand and the price follows, the savings can be in aggregate millions of dollars in single months when the price goes up.
How do you make your money?
So the administrator or the administration of the program is funded by a per kilowatt hour fee. So for every kilowatt hour of energy that is billed through this program, the administrators make 8/100ths of a penny. And then we split that evenly between our local. Well, yeah, it's the supplier. It's a relatively simple math problem, but it is not a simple trail to audit, I should say. We split those fees evenly with our local manager. In this case, it's Jeff and his team, and so that way we ensure that there's a real local operation, a real local presence to serve the communities, as well as the kind of more centralized administrative capabilities that Jewel has to do, interfacing with Central Hudson and the suppliers and the
So
state.
if we were to do this, would we be a part of the aggregate with Poughkeepsie, the city of Poughkeepsie, Beacon, Fishkill, and Red Hook, or would we be?
The answer is it's possible. So the supplier is under no contractual obligation to add communities at the same rate under the same contract, but we'll ask them. And it's possible that if the market has not moved too much in the interim since we signed the contract in May, that they may be able to offer the same price and the same contract terms to communities that wish to join in at a later date, but we can't guarantee that.
So if not, what happens? We wait for another aggregate to come together and buy en masse with them?
Yeah, we go back out to bid. So the town and village of New Paltz was signed on to the program, I think, last week. And we expect other communities to do so fairly quickly here within Central Hudson territory. And the idea would be to try to get a critical mass together again quickly. And
What is a critical mass? A couple of 100,000 or?
it's lower than that. Really, the baseline that we use is usually between 15 and 20,000 households and small businesses. So not population, but households. So the good rule of thumb is about 1 household to every 3 residents. So if you take your population, you may not know offhand how many households you have, but if you take your population, divide by 3, you'll get a ballpark estimate.
About 4,000.
4,000 households, right? And so the town and village of New Paltz are about 4,500. So together there, you've already got almost 10,000 households. And
What's the downside to this?
well, the risk is that you set a fixed rate and then the market for electricity crashes. The market rate goes down below that for an extended period of time.
But people could opt out if that happens.
People can opt out, and it's not particularly likely for that to happen since natural gas prices are still really pretty low, historically low. They've stayed there for quite a while, but the forecasts are always that they'll go up. But so you can't guarantee how your fixed rate will fare against the market, but that's the big
Can
risk.
someone opt out and opt back in? Is it fluid?
They can.
What do you guys think about this?
I mean, I'm generally supportive. I'm totally curious about the 800ths of a penny from each, whatever that is. Is this being run? Are these for-profit businesses? Are they non-for-profit? How many jobs are potential to be generated by more communities coming on board? What's the kind of environmental impact that these businesses are able to have? It's great when people make money, but it's even better when it actually also, that money that you're generating for your business is also giving back to the community. So what does that look like?
Well, I was going to start with my organization is a not-for-profit focused on municipal sustainable programs. Basically, Lens is a for-profit organization moving towards B Corp. And just I was going to talk about the price. We did get prices in, and so it's wonderful. Like Glenn and I would go out and do these conversations before May 3rd, and we'd have theoretical conversations about the price. But we know that the prices are in now, and we know that the average for the past 12 months of Central Hudson was about 6.8 cents. And the price we got for the 100% clean New York Clean Energy is 6.36 cents, so about half penny better. So it is a true win-win. I mean, that's what this program is seeking, is the win-win opportunity. And that includes the fee that Glenn talked about. Like the suppliers, when they come back, have to include that price. And so there's benefit in that way.
But
And it
there's
is
also
promoting.
benefit in that we're committing to renewable energy, not fossil fuel energy.
Yeah.
Is
And not to-
nuclear power considered
It's not,
clean?
no, it's not. I'm going to turn over to Glenn in just 1 second. I was going to set the stage for you by saying, in terms of that local job thing, because Jewel is very forward-thinking in terms of the way they're working. My inclusion in the program is one example, because they realized that to do this, they could just be an administrator and depart and let it go for 2 years and watch it from an arm's distance. But they realized they needed an organization to be in the community, to continue to do outreach and education, and to bring in other program elements. And so that's what my role is. That's what my team does. But also they're very forward-thinking in what they asked the state to allow in their implementation plan, which, to speak more to your point on local job creation, economic development, I'm going to turn it over to you now, is and you didn't want to muddy the water with too many details, but it is really worth knowing about the true local renewable energy platform that CCA allows to springboard into, and so I'm going to springboard over to you.
Sure, thanks, Jeff. There's a couple things. One, I wanted to give context, which I usually do. The 8/100ths of a penny means nothing to anybody. It's about $6 to $7 a home a year to administer the program. So between $24,000 and $30,000 roughly for the town, which is paid by the supplier, as Jeff mentioned, not by the town to administer the program. So that's a rough a sense of the scope of it. In terms of jobs, it's not these programs don't happen to be, quite frankly, they're not major job creators.
Yeah.
But Jeff does have a team of 3 and growing. Part-timers to begin with, but that's how these things started. I was the program director for the Westchester program when we launched. I hired 3 down there at, I think, a full-time staff of 5 or 6 serving in Westchester County. So not major organizations, but job creators locally, and those jobs are, by definition, local jobs. But the real key is, as Jeff mentioned, which is the platform, right? The community choice aggregation law that you must pass to give yourself the authority to do this is itself just that, right? It's authority to work as a community within clean energy markets in a way that you don't typically have access to. So the first is this basic first step, which is to take your residents and small businesses out to bid to see if you can get a better price on a 100% New York State renewable supply product. And the answer is yes, you can. The next step, or the next several steps, have to do with incentivizing the acceleration of development of local clean energy resources, like community solar, to act collectively on the energy demand side through devices like smart thermostats and other controllable devices in your home, to actually reduce consumption at the times where the grid is under most stress, usually in those hot summer afternoons, to incentivize energy efficiency at the home level, and as well as on the system level. So there's all sorts of things that you can do collectively through a CCA program. It usually begins with procurement of energy supply, but that's just the beginning of a whole host
So
of
who would
initiatives.
that be Jewel working with us on this?
It would be this partnership, but Jewel is, actively developing those types of additional programs.
So you have information we can get out to our residents and we can start talking about this? I mean, if we wanted to move ahead, what's the next step? I mean, obviously, we need to let residents know that we're thinking about this and try and get some buy-in.
Yeah, so there's three big next steps. One is the passage of an enabling local law, which I just mentioned. And that local does not commit the town to going through with the CCA. It's an exploratory enabling law. It just says it's a home rule authority thing. That's the way the New York State has set it up. So each individual city, town, and village has to pass their own laws to say, we're enacting our home rule authority to do community service aggregation, should we choose to. The second,
If we pass such a law, would it cover the village, or would they have to?
no, separate laws.
I talked to the mayor, and this is also going to our joint environmental committee, and the village is interested in talking about this.
The second is to select an administrator, right? We hope it's us, but you have other choices, so that's a job for the town board, the supervisor and the town board to explore their options there. We're happy to talk through what an administrator does and all of those sorts of things, but obviously that's really, your decision to make. And then third is what the supervisor raised, which is the public outreach, and that's really the heaviest lift, and that's where Jeff has been an absolute tireless sustainability warrior, as I like to refer to him. Doing public events, including town board presentations, but certainly not limited to them, public Q&As and open house engagement with local press, both paid and unpaid media, radio interviews, all sorts of other in-person events, and various ways of social media, various ways of getting the word out there about what's going on and giving folks an opportunity to feedback on whether they think it's a good idea or how they'd like to see the town move forward.
What do you guys want to do? You want to explore this?
I don't see why not.
Save the planet, save money.
Do you have examples of other laws that
Sure.
I think we'd get a local law from you, we'd give it to our attorney, we review it, we go through the local law adoption and process, it's an enabling law.
For instance, send you the capital local law that Red Hook passed. It's essentially our template local law, which is their information. I can also send you a template version that's already Word.
We could send everything to the clerk, I think we want to look at this and proceed. Does anybody have any comments or questions from the audience? Todd?
Is the window, the 2-year window, that clock starts when the town opts in, or is it a 2-year window that all municipalities meet at the same time? In other words, does the town board have to act before this 2-year?
Well, we'd be a
Before
part of it,
some
I
deadline?
think we'd be a part of an aggregate. Once our aggregate is formed, we'd be shopping for a plan, and once we opt into the plan, what I heard is that's when the clock starts.
So the clock starts on an individual municipality basis?
No, on an aggregate basis. Once we-
Aggregate with who though?
With Red Hook or New Paltz, whoever we're buying with.
So that's my question, then, since they've already brought in, they must have a window that's where the clock starts on some.
That's right. They've all signed a contract. So each individual municipality signs a contract. It's identical, but they sign their own contract with the supplier.
With their own rate.
With their own rate, if the rate is, in this case, that group of 7 towns, they have the same rate, the same contract term, with the exception of Red Hook, they'll join a couple months later. But the others are starting in July 1st. It will run through July or the end of June 2020.
So their clock will be offset from whatever Rhinebeck is unless Rhinebeck happens to join.
We'll have to be, they just said that they would check and see if we could get it in this aggregate unless the rate is changed. So that's something to be determined.
Right, so if it, let's say for instance, it takes 4 months, right?
It might be a part of another aggregate at another rate.
You may be part of another aggregate, or if the supplier says yes, you may choose to sort of stream in and get the last 20 months of this contract and then kind of go back out with that bigger group in the second.
Sally?
Typically, how long has it taken to get the community educated and supported to help the town board with signing the contract?
It's a minimum, this is a state regulated, a very closely state regulated process. It's a minimum of 60 days. So even being here today sort of starts that clock, but we don't want to rush it, and because there's also some requirements within that 60 days. You have to have 2 public events where you give folks a chance to come and hear about it and ask questions. You have to get something in the local paper, you know, either in advance of those events or separate from that, that discusses specifically the exploration of the town and/or village into this program. So there's kind of, it's not a huge hurdle.
We can use our website, we can use our town Facebook page.
Absolutely.
I think that's how you got to us, is that one of our residents who I happen to be married to went to an event in Red Hook and wanted us to look at it.
Yeah, and that's the way these things tend to kind of spread, you know, and
I'm sorry.
that Red Hook meeting.
Nina, did you have a question? Oh,
I have a quick question. The communities that have signed on so far, approximately what % of the residents are currently using Central Hudson as their supplier?
Do you mean how many people are opting out?
Well, no, the only people that are automatically in are the current Central Hudson customers. So I'm not currently. I buy through Green Mountain.
Yeah.
So I have to actually act proactively join. But how many people, what % of your residents?
85%.
Wow.
85% are Central Hudson residents?
That's about the average. Now, the reason why it's so low, or so high, actually, you know, depending on how you ask it, the reason that the number of people that have, like you have, selected an alternate supplier is so low is because it's a pretty,
It's daunting.
It's
The
daunting.
guys are outside of the sunflower, organic market. It's hard to figure out how to do it on your own.
Yeah, and if you've done what Jeff has done, which is to look up all the offers, it's just a page after page of companies you don't recognize and rates, and you're not sure how to compare them, and you're not sure if they're companies that are on the up and up, or there's like a few bad apples out there, of course. So the reason that most people have stayed away is because it's a confusing and difficult process, even those that want to take action, like I want clean energy. So there's a relatively small number of people that have in fact taken action. So what CCA does is takes everybody else and allows them to the offer or the option to select a default, which is both a lower price than the average they're paying and is also a 100% renewable.
Wow.
If more than one municipality comes to you as a group and they negotiate their rate,
Yeah, the bigger the better, up to a certain point, but certainly the last group was about 33,000 households and small businesses. That's a really great number to get a good price because it's a lot of energy. You can still get a good price with less than that, but and you can get maybe even a tick better price with more than that. But it's a little bit more of an art than a science, really, and it depends on the timing of when you go out to bid. But for the most part, the more strength in numbers you have, the better price you get.
and the town could also, you said there are 3 authorized dealers in New York State, so the town could look at possibly 3 different pricing, so it should.
Not 3 different pricings, 3 different options for administration. You have to choose, before you get that price, you have to be working with one or the other.
First, we do our enabling local law, then we shop for an administrator. We're hoping it'll be Jewel, we'll do diligence, and then we do public outreach.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I have one more question. Is there any impact on this whole group if, say, half of our residents had solar or something like that? Like, is there any influence on your ability to negotiate if there's energy being generated within the community?
It's a good, interesting question. I wish the answer was a little more nuanced. The answer is really no, right? So when you have you get the data from Central Hudson based on who's doing what within the town. You give that to the supplier, you share that with the supplier. They look at it, they look at a number of things, right? Most importantly, how much power is this, but also when is it, and a couple of other things. And then they give you a price that's fixed, that stays fixed no matter what happens. So even if 25% of the town opts out, they still have to offer that same fixed price no matter what. So it's pretty bulletproof in that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, we're looking forward to speaking more to you.
Thank you.
We have John Steinmeier here for a brief update on our cemetery wall, which we've gotten dozens and dozens of compliments on. So people are so complimentary. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming. Jeff, can I? Oh, you gave it to him? Okay. Thank you. First of all, I just want to tell Suzanne, Nikki, the cemetery committee, and all of your hard work. I have gotten more compliments on this wall than anything in a while. People are thrilled. They think that it's, a really important thing for the gateway to our town, and everybody's happy to see it's going so well, and happy to see that there's a woman out there too working. So thank you. And you're here because we have hit a rock that we didn't anticipate. We need to fund more money.
Yeah, I'm here to discuss a request for a change order for rock excavation that was encountered during the removal of the original wall and excavation. So basically explained that there was about 2 days of rock excavation that had to occur.
Can we do this? Didn't we bid something out? And how do we legally give you more money if we've gone through an RFP? And
Yeah, generally speaking, rock excavation is not included.
But it depends on the terms of the contract.
Correct.
So we have to know.
If we don't, and in this particular contract, we didn't address rock excavation. Being it was an existing wall, we did not proceed that we were going to take rock. So it's vague or basically undefined in the contract. So
we have to refer this to our attorney.
Yeah.
Chauncey, will you and Ed work on that?
Sure.
I'm not.
I can work on it, I'll supervise him.
Well done, touche. I think we
It's
need.
usually the other way around and I work.
Well, and you're also only asking for half of what it costs.
I did discuss with the contractor, and he did cut the original price in. Basically cut his original request in half.
Excellent.
How do you guys feel about this?
Bias.
I think we have to see what the
Why are you
contract
biased?
Because he's spearheading it's his
okay.
project.
It's his project.
No, how much is it?
$4,000.
$4,000. Out of $175,000.
So we'll refer it to our attorney, and Ed will get back to you after Chauncey supervises them. Thank you. And the wall does look great, so thank you. Sure.
That will last until the next millennium.
So, yeah, all right, I'm going to start. We just have a bunch of resolutions now.
Did anyone do this, the other cemetery one?
I'm going to start in order because we have to transfer some money, I think. Is that all right? Resolution, I'll make a motion for Resolution 2019-146 for our budget transfers and amendments. May I have a second? Thanks, Ed. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. I will make a motion for Resolution 2019-147 for our preliminary accounts payables, our abstracts, which are 71 checks totaling $253,319.06. May I have a second? Thank you, Alan. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. I will make a motion for Resolution 2019-148 for our capital projects abstracts, which is one check for $12,592. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chauncey. I think that is for our Tyler Technologies, our townwide reassessment, reevaluation, which we are going to be able to pay for without bonding. So we're doing well this year. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. We've done Resolution 4. Resolution 2019-150, printer for the supervisor's office. I'm going to motion that. May I have a second? Thank you, Alan. Yeah, I'd like a printer, so I think it's a couple $100. Thank you for your consideration. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. It's a color printer, so you guys can use it too. We can print maps and things now and actually see the colors. Resolution 2019-151, a portable projector for Town Hall. We've got our screen. Let's get a projector. Thank you. I need a motion.
Motion.
Thanks, Chauncey. May I have a second? Is that Alan? Thanks, guys. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Resolution 2019-152, Coast Guard docking at the Rhinecliff waterfront. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Alan. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chauncey. Is there any discussion?
This was at the request of the Coast Guard. They want to do a publicity day and tours of the cutter and so.
Yeah, they do. Are they going to hold us harmless?
Yeah,
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. I need a motion for Resolution 2019-153, a policy allowing Recreation Director to authorize return of recreation facility use deposits. May I have a motion? Thank you, Alan. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kira. This so that it doesn't have to come to the town board every time she has to return a $25 deposit.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Okay, Suzanne, this was quick, we got there. I need a motion for Resolution 2019-154 for the use of cemetery burial plots without vaults.
I'll make it.
Thank you, Ed. May I have a second? Thanks, Alan. As it is now, vaults are required in our cemetery. If you're of the Jewish faith, the vaults are turned upside down so the coffins can come in direct contact with the ground. We are now making it an elective to have a vault or not, so that if you don't want a vault, you don't have to, but we are going to charge a fee because there is additional maintenance for cemetery plots without vaults. There's more settling. So you have to go back 1 or 2 times and top it up, and the fee will be $500. We think that the vault costs about $1,200.
2,000.
How much is a vault, Suzanne? 1,000 to 2,000. So we're making this, it's no longer mandatory to have a vault. That's what this is about, and this cemetery committee recommends this.
And it was never required up until when?
I think the early 90s,
The 90s. So it's only been in effect for 15 years.
So not only is it cost saving, it allows for personal preference. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So moved. I need a motion for Resolution 2019-155, assigning councilperson. I don't even know that we need a resolution for this.
I'll
I
make
mean,
a motion if we need one.
okay, well, we have it, so let's just vote on it. Typically, I just assign liaisonships, but hey, let's vote on it. So, may I have a second?
Oh, we got a motion
I
second.
think Kira did it, and Chauncey's seconding. Are you going to supervise Ed on this one too?
Of course.
No,
Okay.
I'm going to support.
Okay.
That's right. That was funny.
All in
I'll be
favor?
back.
Aye. Any opposed? Thanks, Ed. This because Ed does maintenance, and there's a lot of maintenance dovetails a lot with recreation, so thanks.
Happening.
I need a motion for Resolution 2019-156 for hire of temporary part-time laborer.
Make that one.
Thank you, Ed.
Second.
Thanks, Alan. Who are we hiring? Oh, this is for part-time, we lost our seasonal, full-time seasonal laborer. So we are hiring a part-time laborer to mow at the cemetery.
He has a lot of experience. He's done it.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Resolution 2019-157, Summer 2019 Recreation Department Promotion and Hires. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Alan. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ed. Is there any discussion?
This was just a reshuffle of the personnel pool.
To fill the aquatics director and, yes. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. I'll make a motion for Resolution 2019-158 for software for the Assessor's Office. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alan Chauncey. This is for Apex Advanced Mapping Software. Tyler Technologies is using it during our reassessment, revaluation, our townwide project. The Assessor's Office would like the same software so they can continue doing this, as we'll be in a revaluation program yearly. It's just smart, it's time-saving, it's what we need. It cost $1,200 and it needs to be installed. And there will be a small yearly fee for licensing, but I wholeheartedly recommend this and I hope you'll support it. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Thank you. Resolution 2019-159, adopting a new fee schedule. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Chauncey. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kira. This to amend our fee schedule to charge a $500 fee for those plots opting not to have a vault. And also, we have overtime burials on Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. We're adding evening burials to that. Sure.
I just want to clarify for the public, that this doesn't apply to the natural burial ground. This only applies to the conventional part of the cemetery.
For the vaults?
Right. 'cause
Yeah,
there's
there are no vaults
Right,
in
so,
it.
but we're also not charging extra fee in the natural burial ground because that's the way the whole burial, because we don't have to add soil in the natural burial ground because we mound up in there.
Right, but there is an overtime charge for weekend and,
That's true.
Yes.
For all the sections.
yes, their
Yeah.
vaults are, yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. We've tabled our request for the solar law. We will be coming forward with a draft for that will be disseminated to the public and open for public comment. Is there any committee, or I think Chauncey, yep, I wasn't so clear. Any committee liaison or board reports, Chauncey?
I have two.
Okie dokie. Okay.
I want to bring you up to date on what has been happening or not happening in connection with the LED project. Just quickly, the background. You'll recall that in the past, and it happened to be in October of 2017, we got a quote from Central Hudson, $303 and change for each of the light poles and associated fixtures that we would buy from them at what is called the stranded asset value of the existing lights. And that was the basis upon which we went forward with some analyses about doing the project and the cost savings and the time it would take to liquidate or amortize the capital investment. We then had a process of several months in which an organization of which we were a part called Mid-Hudson Streetlights Consortium tried to get the project going and was unable to do that because we didn't get bids from the industry that made the projects feasible for the 20-odd communities that were in the consortium. So that went away, and the New York Power Authority stepped into the vacuum and organized most of the 20-odd communities, the majority of them, I think it was about 13, to go forward with our planned projects for the LED streetlight conversions. We got to the point where we received from Central Hudson the documents that would be the starting point for putting together a purchase transaction, think in terms of a contract of purchase and a deed and that kind of thing. And our counsel, Warren Raplansky, reviewed the documents and made requests to Central Hudson for changes that had previously been agreed to by Central Hudson with other communities. That was in November of 2018. And the screen went blank at that point. We didn't hear anything for quite some time. We began to reach out to Central Hudson, try to find out what was going on. We had difficulty getting information. At one point I was told, oh gosh, we lost your file. Could you please send us the information again, which we did immediately. Finally, I got a reply in March, after we had been pressuring them for several months, indicating that Central Hudson was working with, their words, the Public Service Commission on guidelines to determine a purchase price consistently for all municipalities for the purchase for the stranded asset value of the lights to be purchased by the communities from Central Hudson. There is, during the process of doing one of these conversions, buying the Central Hudson fixtures, which is the word usually used for the assets, and then converting to LED streetlights, there is, during that process, for each community, a Public Service Commission proceeding. That proceeding is going on right now for Rosendale and Redwood. And in that proceeding, the stranded asset value is being re-examined. I have not been able to find out why. I have made inquiry through the state agency known as the New York State Department of Public Service. I did that last month, trying to find out from them what is going on, whether there's anything we can do to accelerate the process, whether there's any possibility of our insisting that Central Hudson made an offer to us. We, in effect, accepted it at $303 per light, and we're not terribly interested in hearing about those changes. The response was basically not a chance, and all we can do is wait. I got to the public, the New York State the Department of Public Service, through the New York Power Authority, which is in charge of this whole process now, whom I found very, very good to work with. So I think we have to accept what we've been told, which is that all we can do is sit and wait, see what the so-called stranded asset value is going to be. And I've been told that we should not necessarily think that the price is going to go up. And I'm not in the business of buying bridges, and I don't think it's going to go down. I think it's going to go up. I don't know when, I don't know how much, I don't know how much it will change the pro forma. We had pretty favorable numbers in terms of the energy savings and the amount of time that it would take through the savings to recapture our investment. I would like to believe that when we find out what it will cost us to do the project, we will find that it's still worth doing and that it's economically feasible. It's frustrating, and I assure you I'm probably more frustrated than anybody else, but there we are. And it just, for the sake of the community, our financial investment so far has been really quite small. A certain amount of time and not a great deal for the town attorney, some relatively modest expense. I don't remember the number, but I think it was less than $1,000 for a consultant with whom I did a so-called field audit, identifying all our lights, locating them on a GPS grid and all of those things, which was in February of 2018 we did that. And there we are.
How many lights are we talking about?
Ours are approximately 100, 101, 102. Depends a little bit on how you count them.
There's some in the Rhine Cliff Lighting District and then some that just.
Yeah, that includes the lighting district,
Which
which
is about
has
two-thirds
the
of it.
majority of them. in fact.
64%.
Something like that. Yeah,
66%.
that's right. The village is an entirely separate and different project. They're doing it too. They have approximately twice as many streetlights as we do. So there it is. I'll be back to you eventually.
Hopefully we can get it done. It just feels like still.
I think it'll happen,
Yeah.
but it's just one of those long,
Thank you.
drawn-out things.
Your
I
next
have
thing?
another one.
Okay.
That's the bad news. The good news is that we did complete on the Friday after Memorial Day the painting of 2 of our 4 tennis courts at the Thompson Mazzarella Park for the play of pickleball. So we now, thank you, Kira. We continue to have 4 courts available for tennis. 2 of them also can be used for pickleball, and play has begun. There have been pickleball games that have occurred on our pickleball courts. Fortunately, there was a minimal amount of disturbance, I believe, of the tennis players. It was very difficult because of the weather and the schedules of volunteers and the schedule of a consultant who was provided to us free of charge by, believe it or not, the USA Pickleball Association. This thing is catching on like wildfire. It's going to be like the tennis craze of the 70s and 60s, whenever, 80s, whenever that was.
Here first.
That's right. Now, I'd like to pause a moment and discuss with you what we do about some kind of ceremony in the way of a grand opening or something, if we choose to do it. And if we choose to do it, Alan and Elaine Fernandez and I discussed this just within the last few days. One of them, I think it was Alan, raised the question, if we do some kind of opening thing for the, to celebrate the opening of these pickleball courts, whether we should combine it with something about the pavilion. So I give you that, and we need to think about that. And then we need to think about some maintenance issues, which are pretty significant. And I'll ask Ed to comment on those. Yeah, please.
Well, on Friday, as you know, we mentioned the fact that pickleball courts were broken, but at the same time, showing some notice of the courts and a lot of disrepair. There's tears in the courts, the baselines are cracked. So I called Copeland to get the resurfacing.
When did they do that? 3 years ago?
2014.
14?
Yeah, 5 years ago. He came down, took a look at them, and he said, first of all, a lot of those pine trees have never been planted there. They've dropped tar all over the place. And it's a mess. There's trees to the right, they're dropping debris all over the twigs. And
Why
it's
don't
a
we remove the
constant.
trees?
He suggested power washing once a year. He also will look at what needs to be done on those courts, and he's going to send me an estimate and try to show the board into the rec commission to see what they want to do. But it does need a lot of help, and taking those trees down so would be a great help because they drop so much. Nobody has.
And there's a lot of shade, like it doesn't allow them to dry out.
Yeah, and there's nobody has trees around the tennis courts. It's crazy. So I don't know who did that or why it was put in, but they should be taken out with small trees, crab apples or something behind it, or not, invasive. So that's where I was at. He's going to send an estimate, and we'll see what it's like.
So, I mean, we'll take care of this at budget season, not off budget.
No, right. So
Well,
That's the big.
and we have another issue of consequence. The lighting is not good.
that's the other thing.
We have 6 light poles. The courts are lined up east to west. The most easterly court is along the road that leads down to the ball field, for those of you who are familiar with the site.
Yep.
The way the lights are working now, the first court is pretty well lit, I think, for night play. The second court, not so much. And then the last 2, I'm not good at all. And I think that in the case of the last 2, it may be about the light standards that are there. They're there are 3 fixtures along the eastern boundary and 3 along the western boundary of the courts, and outside the fences, of course. Two of the fixtures on the light poles look as though they turned away from the courts. Each of the 6 poles has 2 lighting units. One of them is burned out on the west side. I don't expect you to appreciate all these details, and I'm sure you don't care about the details very much, but the fact is that we're spending money on energy for courts that are not very well lit for night play and perhaps not playable in the opinion of many people.
And
Except for that first court.
I called Central Hudson to come last week, and they were supposed to come here, take a look, evaluate the lighting. I don't think anything happened. I think they fixed one light over the volleyball court, that was it. But they're all different intensities. It's crazy. It's all being used.
So what are we doing about it?
I'm calling back and Sean.
Well, that's what we bring it to the board for consideration. This situation, I haven't played tennis in years, so I had no occasion to go down to those courts at night. But now, I went down because I wanted to see after we finished painting the courts whether the courts are playable at night. And I think it's a bad situation. The problems Ed was referring to concern me a lot because people could get hurt. You're playing on surfaces that are not sound, and that can lead to falls and injuries, and I think we have to face up to it.
Okay,
I don't think it's monumentally expensive,
Okay, so
but I think we
fix
have
it.
to,
We gotta give it some attention.
yeah, exactly.
You guys have a real backboard down there too.
Yeah, that was good.
Okay. Anything else?
I got some.
Okay.
Okay, just a short time ago, Wonderland Florist gifted 3 flowering trees to Thompson Mazzarella Park, and the maintenance supervisor, Bobby Fitzpatrick, and I went and picked them up, and we planted them that same day with the help of Adam. I just wanted to thank Wonderland for the gifting. I want to thank Bobby Fitzpatrick and his son for helping me plant them.
Where did we
We're watering
plant them?
right now, but they're just outside the ball field. They look great.
Great. And did we get the water bags for them?
No, because we found out that watering lasted 2 days and we have to feed them anyway.
Okay.
So
Great.
they were $50 each too.
Thank you. Anything else from anybody? Alan?
Yeah, one of these that didn't get on the agenda was the concession stand operator.
Oopsie.
So here's the contract. It's already signed by Sheila Ann Brown, who is the concession operator. It's basically the same contract we used last year, with the exception being that she's not paying any fees. We're lucky to have
We're lucky to
somebody.
find somebody.
Yes.
Yeah, we're lucky that we're not paying somebody to do it.
We're looking at a food truck.
Has Warren approved this?
Yeah, this is the same, it's the exact same contract.
Oh, so you're asking,
I'm asking us to authorize you to sign this.
there's a motion, can I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Any
good.
opposed? So moved. Great, I'll sign
All
it.
right, let me just say a few things about rec. Day camp at the park starts on the 8th of July, goes 6 weeks. It's $140 for each resident child. So if it's a grandchild and they're from the Bronx, they have to pay non-resident fees, just to be clear, which is $200 a week. It's a 6-week program, ends on August 16th, Monday to Friday, 9 to 4. The park does not have facilities for day camp in inclement weather. So we can take care of kids for an hour or two at the library, which opens at 10 a.m. So if the inclement weather cooperates, we can take care of the kids for an hour or two, but that's about it. So you have to be careful if you have a child in this program that you may have to wind up either not bringing them on day because of the weather or picking them up. So pavilions at the park are not lightning protected, and moreover, the health department requires us to stay away from the pool if there's lightning or thunder, which is what happened last summer in excess. So we had a lot of problems last summer. Swim lessons, we have 3 2-week sessions starting again on the first day of camp, July 8th. pool passes are now on sale. We have a site called Rhinebeck Records, rhinebeck.com, which has got all the information plus I just gave you. And there's, I don't know whether we have to pass a resolution for this, but the rec committee is asking for a free swim on Wednesday, the evening of Wednesday, June 26th, as a kind of a marketing thing, have people come to the pool and swim for free and see what it's like and fall in love, and come.
I gotta say that the pool looks fantastic. What Elaine and Chrissy, Amy, and all of our staff have done, they've made it, it needs renovation, and we want to work on that master plan, but what they've done is just amazing,
Yes.
so it's a lot of good work. We probably should make a resolution to have a free swim.
And I would like to include, maybe have some pizza for people, so a couple $100 for pizzas.
Okay, what's your resolution?
Free swim, June 26th, $250, let's say, for free pizza.
For Rhinebeck residents
For
only?
Rhinebeck, well, for whoever shows up, we're not gonna take IDs.
We're going to do this for non-residents?
Yeah, why not? Want people to check, show me your driver's license, kind of a thing.
Town money.
You can have a pizza. The idea is it's a marketing. Figure we get, 10 or 15 pizzas.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Good, thank you.
It's good pizza, right?
Yeah, pizza, 26th to Wednesday. Pardon me? You can come if you like.
Is there any other questions, comments?
Oh,
Alan's got another?
Yeah, there's one other thing. We've been having movie nights at the park. And, pardon me?
Sorry.
One of the members of the Recreation Committee put down on this project and was showing movies outdoors in the evening for free. And we were served notice that we
Cease and
need to pay
desist.
royalties for those movies to the tune of $225 showing, which we're not going to do. But if there's anybody listening or here that knows anything about how to get around this problem, or who to talk to get a more reasonable fee, please let me know, or let Elaine Fernandez know.
Check with the walkway, because they work with someone who's showing outdoor movies underneath the walkway.
Probably do public, probably do movies that are in public domain, but
Well, yeah, we could show The Little Dictator or something like that.
Well, there's also, I believe, as long as you don't say what movie it is, you can describe the movie, but if you use the name of it to advertise, then you are.
We don't advertise, we just say there's a movie.
we'll check with the walkway over the Hudson River. Anybody else have any concerns, comments, questions, suggestions? Bob, you can do whatever you like. Looking good without the cane.
Have to go back to it.
It's hard to
Hi, Bob, Both. As you well know, this issue about screening has been going on for over a year. And myself, Susan Magusa, and some of my other neighbors have been directly and vicariously involved with it. It's been a long process, and suddenly things changed last week. And we came tonight to hear the discussion of what the zoning review committee submitted to the board. We were prepared to hear you speak about it and possibly offer some of the concerns that we have and we think the board should know about. We like the recommendations if that's what's being submitted. We don't know what has been submitted. We don't know what is going to warrant. Is there any way of knowing ahead of time, or will the community know ahead of time what's being proposed or offered for public comment at the July meeting?
Are you guys comfortable with being be speaking
Sure,
to
go
this?
I mean, just as to what we're going to
Yes.
do? Yeah, sure.
We had a attorney-client meeting tonight, and our planner also attended. And the board received the recommendation for the zoning group. The board is going to go ahead with an amendment to our solar law to require,
Well, I don't know, I wouldn't,
let me just finish.
If there's another
I
one,
wouldn't, excuse me, I don't think we came out of that meeting with the idea that we would talk about the substance of the change until we see it, we get it written. That's what the public hearing is for.
Can I tell the public what we asked to be in the law?
No, that's what I think would be a big mistake. It's too easy for there to be a misunderstanding as a result of something like that. Because you like to say, you can do what you want. My recommendation would be not to. Let's wait until we have the document in front of us.
This
This
is
is my concern. If what is presented, it will be presented at the July meeting? Or will it be presented to the community before the July meeting?
Well, I mean, we'll go through a local adoption process like we do with everything, and there'll be plenty of notice, and there'll be plenty of public hearing.
So,
The board does not want me to discuss what we talked about in attorney-client.
So, if anything, this matter most likely will go into August, possibly September.
Well, I mean,
We'll wait one meeting a month.
it depends on how quickly we can get it done. We need a draft from our planner to go to Warren, and then the draft will be laid down at the town board, for the town board at a meeting, and we'll schedule public hearings. I would say that we would see a draft by July, I would hope.
Yeah.
So is it fair to expect that at the regular July town board meeting, this proposal?
I would hope so, but you never know with
Well,
our
the
attorneys.
fastest thing could possibly happen would be that we would accept the proposed law at the July meeting and set the hearing for the, do we have a meeting in August? For the August meeting, that would be the fastest.
So
But
then,
it could
if
certainly
that's-
take longer.
if that's the procedure, then the public comment part would be at the August meeting. Not
We
at
would
the July
schedule,
meeting.
Correct.
well, we take comment all the time. We always let people talk, but we will be hot scheduling public hearings for a local law adoption.
Okay. Then a way to present our concerns is the zoning review committee still going to meet in July? Is there
The
any
zoning
way?
review committee has nothing to do with this now. They are an advisory committee only. They have advised the town board. The town board has taken their advice, and now we will commence our local law adoption.
Leslie, if we have the concerns that we have, what would be the venue of presenting them? Would we not
Public
present
hearing.
it to the town board?
Public hearing
Or
for
wait
the-
until the public hearing?
Public hearing.
For the town here.
That's what the public hearing is for.
That's what the public hearing is for, is to hear public concerns about a law.
So if this matter is presented, the proposal is presented by Mr. Plansky at the July meeting, and we present our concerns at the end of that meeting.
You can present them then, you can present them at the public hearing, we can take them into record when we receive the law, whatever you like. You can speak as often as you like.
Oh, don't say that to me. You've read my reports.
And I do read them. Yeah, we'll take comment whenever you want to give it.
No, but I'm particularly taking up the time. I just need to know the procedure.
That's the procedure.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks for coming.
Just so that I'm really clear, you had attorney-client privilege, and you discussed,
We had an attorney-client meeting.
right, to move forward with,
We had an attorney-client meeting to discuss a local law that we want to craft.
right, and so you agreed to not share what you were asking.
It's an attorney-client meeting, it's confidential, it's privileged.
I'm just making sure that I can clearly define what I write, and I don't want to.
We gave
call
our
later
attorney
that I didn't
and
get it right.
we gave our attorney and our planner direction about the local law. And we would like to see a draft and workshop it in attorney-client before we disseminated to the public. Is that accurate?
Yes.
But
Yeah,
it sounded
make
like
sure
there
it
was
says
some degree of talk amongst yourself as well as to.
Only with the attorney here. Only while Warren Romansky was here.
But you talked amongst yourself, but while the attorney was there as well.
We had an attorney-client meeting.
I gather
We
that.
gave our attorney and our planner direction for a local law that we would like to see a draft of and workshop an attorney-client meeting before we give it out to the public.
What I'm asking though is that workshop includes discussion amongst yourself,
No, not necessarily.
not necessarily.
No, I polled the board and that's what we did.
It was direct discussion. You talked to the attorney directly and individually, not amongst yourself.
Correct. Is that accurate?
Actually, yes.
Yeah. Any further discussion, comments, concerns? Dave?
Peter on 340 Woodford Road. I'm not sure how this fits into the conversation about the information about licenses. Anyway, my wife and I sent a letter to the town board on March 27th. I wanted to repeat our opinion that changes to the solar law should wait until after the pending appeal of the existing solar lawsuit. Secondly, I appreciate the efforts of the ZRC. I've been impressed with both the ZRC and the planning board workshops, their efforts to discuss impactful issues. My wife and I have been to 2 planning board workshops. It's wonderful seeing the process. It's important and it's encouraging. An important point, I'm not sure if this matters at this point, but one point that was brought up at the ZRC meeting was that someone had said that it seems that screen roof-mounted solar panels on buildings such as Williams is less important. And that was a very good point. It highlights the fact that screening for residential areas is obvious and critical, and that any considerations for law revisions should or could distinguish between commercial and residential zoning. And this brings up a greater point that why does the solar law, allow commercial solar plants in residential communities? Now, communities are not necessarily defined by density, and for our case, our hamlet, our historic hamlet of Wurtemberg, that's clearly made up of people who care about the community. This has been a real problem, and it's caused a great amount of difficulty in the law's implementation. The solar law has good elements, such as smaller acreage and goals of obscuring, but ultimately the zoning, which allows commercial solar plants in 97% of Rhinebeck, as I am told, is either too broad or not granular enough to consider the impact to residential communities. Other municipalities restrict solar power generating plants to industrial or non-residential areas, but Rhinebeck does not. In our opinion, my wife and I, the zoning allowances in the solar law need to be reconsidered. And a question, and I'm not sure how and when the ZRC is going to continue to meet or not, but the question is, how does a request from the public get into the ZRC agenda? Is that too late?
You can email the clerks and I chair the zoning review group. It is an advisory group to work on zoning issues for the town. We decide as a group with input from the town board what's important for us, and I think we've defined our list for this year so far. You can email the town board and the clerk, and however you like. There's something you want us to consider?
The consideration is that we work, the allowed zoning for the zoning law, for the solar law.
I don't know that we would give that to the zoning review group. I don't know. There is, I'm not trying to be vague, I'm just thinking this through. There is a policy for petitioning the town board for a zoning amendment. Would that be applicable? You could email us and we could discuss it. I don't think, that was something we have to publicly put on our agenda to discuss whether the town board wanted to pursue further amendment to our solar law or not. At this point, we are only considering obscuring or screening rooftop mounted commercial solar.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Dave, sure. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, anybody else? Hearing nothing else, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
You didn't want to executive session.
Oh, gosh, thank you, yes. Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss our collective bargaining agreement with the highway. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We will be back to adjourn.